Hi, I'm Scott from Crunchtime Aerial Equipment. I'm here today to talk to you about a little bit of rigging stuff. This is not a rigging course of any sort. Basically, it's just a bit of information, so if you ever wondered why we use certain things and why we do certain things, then hopefully this should clear a few things up. We're going to talk a little bit about metal, a little bit about carabiners and slings and some ropes, and hopefully you get a better understanding. Just a little bit of my background. I started out about 20 years ago as an advanced rigger. I've worked in construction, theatre, aerial, pretty much been there, seen it all, done it all, and hopefully I can just give you some of my knowledge and experience today. Thanks. Okay, in this section we're going to be talking about materials, metal, obviously materials, why we use certain types of metals for various things. The main, probably three, are just mild steel, just your everyday steel, aluminium, because aluminium's quite popular, quite big these days, and the last one is stainless steel. We use stainless steel for quite a few things. So I'm going to give you a bit of a rundown on which, probably more so the pros and cons of each one, why we use them and why we don't. First of all, we'll start with mild steel. Basically, just mild steel. It can be galvanised. Generally when it's shiny like this, it's galvanised steel. If it's not galvanised, it'll need to be painted or coated in something else to stop it rusting. The galvanising is just a coating over standard ordinary mild steel. So if you had just an ordinary steel bar and you get a coating on it, it makes it look like that, then that's galvanised and that protects it from the elements and keeps it stopping from rusting. The advantages of steel, whether it be galvanised or ordinary steel, it's cheap, it's very cheap, it's strong, you can get quite good ratings out of just ordinary mild steel, and it's easy to work with. As a welder, it's really easy to work with. And probably the thing that I like the most about steel is it bends rather than breaks. I mean, steel does break, but it will bend first. So if I was to put that in a clamp, put a lot of pressure down there, that steel would bend pretty much at a right angle before it even thought about breaking. So that's some advantages with steel. Disadvantages, it's probably quite heavy. And there are other steels that are a lot stronger for the same weight and the same size. So it does have its downfalls as well. In general, if you're building something that is custom made, like a lyra or a rig, trapeze bars, things like that, they'll all be made out of steel. Because of those reasons I mentioned earlier. It's just really easy to work with, cheap, strong, a good material. The other material that we use a lot is aluminium. Now, aluminium, as you can see, it's a similar sort of bar as that, looks the same. It's about half the weight. This one is 480 grams. This is only 250 grams, so it's half the weight basically. And it is double the thickness. If you see the thickness there, that's about 4 mil, whereas that one's 2 mil. So even though it's double the thickness, it's still only half the weight, so it's very light. The disadvantage with it is it's a little bit more expensive to buy than mild steel, actually a lot more expensive to buy. It tends to break rather than bend, so if I was to put a lot of weight on the centre there, it would only go to a certain point before it broke, rather than bend, whereas steel will bend quite a lot. So that's one of the reasons why I don't like using it for aerial, and a lot of people don't like using it for aerial. The other disadvantage is it's hard to work with, so you need special equipment to weld it, special equipment to bend it, and when you do weld it and bend it, it's hard to work with it. It's not very pleasant at all, whereas mild steel is very easy to work with. So that's the differences between steel and aluminium. The third one, I don't have a steel bar, but I do have a quick link here, and this is stainless steel. Stainless steel, it's very similar to steel, just a different type. It's shiny, it's a lot harder, it's very hard actually. The ratings on this are quite higher than normal steel, and it will not rust. They're used in marine, on boats and things like that, and you can cut it in half, cut it in pieces. Every piece, every cut won't rust because the stainless steel is a particular type of material. Unlike the galvanising on this, that's a coating. So if I was to cut that end, that can still rust on the end, whereas only the galvanising that doesn't rust. Whereas with stainless steel, you can cut it and it won't rust at all. And it's very strong. It's extremely strong. The downfalls, and a lot of people do use stainless steel. I'm a fan of stainless steel, but the downfalls are it's hard to work with. It's very hard to work with. It's expensive, and yeah, probably that's about it. Hard to work with and it's expensive, so that's why people don't use it. For instance, if I was to make a Lyra out of mild steel, there might be, let's say for rough figures sake, there might be $100 worth of material. If I was to do it in stainless steel, it might be $300 worth of material. So it's kind of a lot more expensive. But it is good. It's fantastic. It's shiny. It gives a nice smooth surface. So your ropes can slide over it very easily. That's why a lot of quick links and D-shackles, like the D-shackles, they come in stainless steel. It's because they're very smooth and the ropes don't wear on them. They can rub on there for forever and they don't wear out the ropes and they don't wear out the steel because it's quite strong. So that's our differences between aluminium and steel, the main differences. But you will note that most of our products that we buy for aerial, carabiners, quick link, not quick links, figure eights, descenders, things like that are all aluminium. And like I said before, mainly due to the weight. Rock climbers use these, aerialists, they want the light weight. And it is reasonably strong for what you get. The reasons I didn't like aluminium, because it doesn't bend as much as steel, it tends to break. They alleviate that when they make these because these are done in a mould. So there'll be, a million made at a time. They pop them in a machine, they're done in a mould, they're made to a specific standard. So this particular carabiner is 25 kN, or 2.5 tonne, should I say. We always work in km when we're talking aerial equipment. So 25 kN, it's quite strong. They'll lift a lot of weight. It's designed for a purpose. If you use it the way it's designed for, it won't break. Whereas if you were making something custom, like a piece of apparatus that you came up with, it's not engineered as such with aluminium, so you've got a chance of it breaking rather than bending and things like that. So that's why equipment that you buy pre-made, a lot of it's aluminium, whereas stuff that's custom made, it'll mainly be steel. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Like I said, I'm going to leave my details at the end of these videos, so if you've got any questions, you can call me, email me, leave a message on my webpage, and you can ask anything you like about this, and I'll get back to you. Thanks. Okay, welcome back. This section's on D-shackles, bow shackles and carabiners. They can get a bit confusing with some people, the terminology, why we use certain ones for certain things. So I'll start off with carabiners. There's three main types. Aluminium, just your basic aluminium carabiner, nice and light, quite a good rating, 25 kN or 2.5 tonne, very useful. This particular one has a spring lock catch. So to release it, you have to turn that and then pull it in. And then when you let it go, it automatically locks and it can't be undone easily. You have to actually twist it to unlock it again. So these are very, very handy. The ones that are similar to these, the same thing, it's an aluminium one. Also, this one has a 22 kN, slightly lower. It does not have the twist lock, it has a screw lock. So you have to screw it to lock it up. If you have it unlocked, you can open it up and it closes, but it can do that constantly until you screw it up. When you lock it up, then it will lock. Okay, but they're not as good as the screw lock, the twist lock, because the screw locks you can forget to do them up. So you pop your equipment up, you get distracted or whatever, it's hanging up there. If something knocks it, it can actually knock the gate open. So they're not ideal. Still good. Also, because the screw lock, if you turn it that way, screws down with gravity, that's technically the way you're supposed to hang it. So that way, as the carabiner vibrates or moves, the screw lock will wind down with gravity and hold it locked. Whereas if you had it up the other way, if it's wobbling around, the screw can actually come undone and end up becoming unlocked in the air. In saying that though, I've tested that, and when you vibrate a carabiner, that will turn either way. So yes, technically gravity will do it up if you put it that way, but it doesn't always happen. So that's why I'm not a fan of these carabiners. There's still heaps of them around and they're still pretty good. If you do them up tight, they're not going to come undone anyway, so they're still good to use. I wouldn't say throw them out or anything like that, but I'm just saying they're not the best product on the market. These particular ones that have the twist lock, you can't go wrong. You have to twist it to open it. You let it go, it's already locked. You can't unlock it. It's pretty much the bee's knees. So that's your two types. Both of them are aluminium. You also get them in steel as well. Generally the steel ones will be that particular colour or a gold colour. These are exactly the same. They have the twist lock to open them. When you let them go, they lock back up again. You can also get steel ones with the screw lock. Not very common these days. The advantage with the steel ones is they're generally a lot higher rated. So whereas this aluminium one is 25 kN, this particular steel one is 45 kN, so that's rated to 4.5 tonne. So a lot higher rating on the steel ones. They are heavier though, so if you've got a whole bunch of them, if you're a rock climber for instance, and you've got like 15 of these strapped to the side of your body, it can get quite weighty with having steel ones. It can get very weighty. So having the aluminium ones does have its place and its purpose. 45 kN is pretty high. You could hang multiple people from that, so that's not a problem. And we'll get into that now about the different shapes and why they're made like that and like that in particular. There's not a huge difference, but carabiners are designed to be hung in line, up and down like that, or side to side, or any angle, but the forces are from that end to that end. In no circumstances should there ever be a force from side to side like that against the screw gate. You cannot hang something like that down from that screw gate. It takes away its entire rating. It's not designed to do that, and it will fail very quickly. But in the correct method, up and down, you know, pulling from end to end that way, perfect. The other shape, you'll see these shapes around quite a lot. There's a bigger section on the top and a smaller one on the bottom, unless you hang it like that and then it's bigger on the bottom. So the reason that is mainly to fit more equipment. So on that you could put a couple of slings quite comfortably, whereas if you try to put a couple of slings in there, it gets a bit tight and it's a bit hard to squeeze them in when it's open. So these are basically to fit larger equipment because it's got a wider gate, you can fit more in there. It also gives you a slightly wider angle. If you were to hang that there, carabiners work perfectly when the force is down and up. They do not like to be pulled to the side. So if you've got that hanging from a rope and you had two slings on the bottom, one coming out in this angle, one coming out on that angle, the carabiner doesn't really like that. You can do it up to a 60-degree angle. Some manufacturers are different, so for every carabiner, I would recommend that you check the data, the technical data sheet for the carabiner, because some might be different. Some are 60 degrees, some are 45 degrees, but you cannot exceed that angle. If I grab a sling, I'll just do it to show you. We'll actually, I'll use the bigger one. We'll pop the sling in like that. So you have the load there and the load there. Just get that clipped up. Like so. That angle should not exceed 60 degrees. And if you want a quick way of knowing if it's 60 degrees is the distance from your carabiner to your load, whatever that is on both sides. If that's the same across the bottom, then that's an equilateral triangle, which gives you 60 degrees in each corner. So you know that's 60 degrees. If you were to go out a lot wider like that, okay, and the carabiner's like that, it does not like it at all. It can hang that way, that's fine, but if you had the load, it's going to be hard to do, the load pulling that way, and another load pulling that way, that's trying to spread the carabiner, that's not good at all. It's not designed to do that. But check with the data that came with the carabiner, because like I said, everyone's different. This one may only allow up to 45 degrees, this one may allow up to 60 degrees. It depends on what they say. Personally, if you're not a rigger, even as a rigger, I generally will not exceed 60 degrees. We can go up to 90, 120 if we know what we're doing and stuff like that. But for these purposes, and especially for this video's purpose, don't exceed 60 degrees. It's just a lot safer. Okay, so that covers the basics of carabiners, the types, the shapes, and things like that. There is a multitude of carabiners you can buy, all different shapes and sizes and ratings. There's just endless amounts. Just choose one that suits you best. I will mention also the steel ones as opposed to the aluminium ones. If you're hooking onto a Lyra, for instance, and the Lyra's got a steel tab on it, or you're hooking onto a hang point that might be steel, steel's always better on steel. So if you've got a steel carabiner, you can hang it straight onto the Lyra, not a problem. Steel rubbing on steel does wear out, and we'll talk about wear rates later. Steel on steel will wear out, but not as quick as, say, aluminium on steel. If you were to put an aluminium carabiner onto a steel tab on a Lyra, that would actually dig into the aluminium quite quick, and it wouldn't last very long at all. If all you've got is a aluminium carabiner, I would suggest putting, say, a quick link onto your Lyra, and then your carabiner onto a quick link, because even though the quick link is steel, it's round, so your carabiner is less likely to wear out. The tab on a Lyra is usually quite wide, and it does have sharp edges. If you don't have a quick link, you could use a D-shackle. Pop a D-shackle on your Lyra and put your aluminium straight onto the D-shackle. That's how I do mine. It just makes it last a whole lot longer, and the steel rubbing on the shackle lasts a lot longer than the aluminium carabiner rubbing on the steel. So, but if you've got a steel carabiner, straight on, not a problem. And I will just touch on wear rates, because people do have carabiners that have been worn quite a bit, or quick links or D-shackles or whatever. The general rule is 10% of the diameter. So if that was 10 mil, you would only want to see about 1 millimetre of wear before you replace the carabiner. For a steel carabiner, that could still take quite a while. They're very robust, and because they're round, they tend to wear out a bit slower. The aluminiums do wear out a little bit quicker, so you want to keep an eye on that. If it digs into the aluminium, just keep an eye on it. It's just a simple measurement, around 1 millimetre or 10% of the diameter, then chuck it away and get a new one. I mean, carabiners, these sell for 20, 30 bucks. It's not worth risking your life of having it worn out for the sake of 25 bucks. Just replace it. It'll take a couple of years to wear out. It's not worth the risk. Even the steel carabiners, these are a little bit dearer because they're heavy duty. They might be up to $50 or $60. But once again, 50 or 60, what's your life worth? I mean, seriously, just replace it if you need to. So wear rate. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about D-shackles and bow shackles. There is a difference. A lot of people think they're the same thing, but they're not. I've got a couple of stainless steel ones here. That is a bow shackle, and the bow shackle is shaped like a bow, basically. It has a wide circle at the top and comes in narrow at the bottom. Okay, whereas a D-shackle is straight up, straight down, just with a loop at the top. Okay, there's various reasons why we use each one. Probably the most common reason is the bow shackle just has more room. I could fit 3 slings in there, whereas on that one I can pretty much only fit maybe 1 sling. If I tried to squeeze 2, it'd be a bit tight, whereas that could fit 2 or 3 quite easily. So generally a bow shackle, because you fit more room in it. The reason we use D-shackles instead of bow shackles is because they're a bit smaller, a bit more neater, and if you're only going straight down, like if that was on a Lyra for instance, and you had a rope attached to it, you know, it's a perfect alternative, whereas the bow shackle might be a bit big and bulky. So both have their pros and cons. Very, very similar, same materials, made the same way, they're both rated, so it's just the shapes that change. Generally, I will use D-shackles mostly because they're smaller, but like I said, if I've got to put a few slings on something or whatever, I'll use a bow shackle. They're stainless steel, so very good weather resistance, very strong, high rated, very good shackles. The other type that you'll see a lot of are steel shackles. These are steel. Now, once again, these are just basic steel and they've been coated in galvanising. Same with the steel, the mild steel we talked about before. It's just basic steel, just with a coating over it. So if you were to put that out in the rain, weather, that's fine. But if you were to cut it, it actually cuts the coat through the coating and it will start to rust. So it's only as good as the coating on it. And the pins are generally painted. So they're quite good weather resistance, but if you scratch the paint off, like this one's been used quite a bit, that will start to rust if it's left out in the rain or something like that. The rust isn't a huge issue because it does take a long time for rust to eat steel, but it does make it hard to turn, hard to undo, and plus it's dirty. We don't want rust on things. It's just best if we stay away from them. Once again, these are also rated. They always have the rating stamped on the side. This one's 3.2 tonne. Also, same thing, bow shackle just has a little bit more room, so you can fit a lot of things in there, whereas the D shackle, straight through, not much room, but really good for neat, tidy, looks good. This is rated at 2 tonne, it's a little bit smaller than that one. These are actually very common, used in just to hook your chain on for the trailer when you're towing the trailer with a car, so they're well rated for that. So there's not much more to talk about shackles, they're pretty straightforward. Why do we use a shackle instead of carabiners? Simple. $25, $30, $50, $60, $3, $5. These things are as cheap as. You buy them anywhere, you can get them at Bunnings, all over the place. Everyone has them, they're always rated. They've got to be a stamp, so you make sure you get a stamp on it to make sure it's rated, but they're cheap. And why hang up a $50, $60 carabiner and wear that out when you can just use a shackle? Just pop the shackle up and use that instead. 3 tonne, it's got a good rating, 3.2 actually. The only downfall with shackles is, I'm just going to grab a cable tie and show you. Sorry about that. Okay, so a shackle, here's the advantage with a carabiner over a shackle. Carabiner is self-locking, easy. Whereas a shackle can undo. It can vibrate loose, it can come loose, pin can come out, drama all over the place. So what you need to do is mouse it. Mousing is just another term for stopping that pin from coming out. Generally, 99% of the time, people use a cable tie, pop it through the shackle, and there's always a hole in the pin. So pop it through the pin, pop your cable tie on, zip it up, and once that's tight, that pin can't actually undo. Excuse me. So once it's tight, cable ties in, it can't undo, your shackle can never come undone. When you need to take the shackle down at the end of the performance or whatever, just a pair of snips, cut the cable tie off, and you can undo it, and away you go. Whereas carabiners, you don't need to worry about that. So I am a big fan of the shackle. If you've got a gig on that's got 20, 30 hang points, plus pullaways and all that sort of stuff, you're not going to buy 20 or 30 $80 carabiners. So shackles are the way to go. Hope that covers everything you need to know about shackles and carabiners. Like I said, end of this video, I'll leave all my details. Want to give me a buzz, send me a message or whatever, I'll get straight back to you and we can talk about it. Thanks. Okay, welcome back again. Scott here from Crunch Time Aerial Equipment. In this section, we're going to talk about slings. Use them all the time. If you're an aerialist, I can guarantee you've used one. Whether it's hanging from or extending your drop or whatever it might be, slings are always used in aerial. We all have seen them before, I take it. 1 tonne sling. They all come coloured, well not all, we'll get to that, but 99% of the time, 95% of the time, the slings are coloured, and the reason they do that is for their rating. So all slings that are purple are rated at 1 tonne. And every manufacturer does the same thing. Just makes it easy, simple. They were designed for construction, so when you're out on a construction site and they're muddy and it's pouring rain, you can barely see, you can at least see the colour, and you get it right by the colour. So all of the purple slings are 1 tonne. They also have a stripe on them, the 1 stripe down the middle. The 1 stripe means 1 tonne. So purple, 1 tonne, 1 stripe, 1 tonne. I've got a green one here. All of the green ones are 2 tonne. Slightly bigger diameter. As you can see, the 2 stripes down the front, so the 2 black stripes, 2 tonne, green, so it's 2 tonne. You'll find every sling the same, and they go right up to sort of 10, 20, 50 tonne. The ones that I use go up to 3 tonne, which are yellow, and they have the 3 stripes for the 3 tonne, so you can't really get it wrong. If you start using slings quite a bit, you just automatically know that green is 2 tonne, purple is 1 tonne, and so forth. So that's why they come up with the colours. Unfortunately for us in the aerial equipment industry, colours suck sometimes. If you've got a nice pretty white Lyra and you know you're dressed in your costume, you want to do your performance, and you've got this ugly purple sling hanging there. So we're kind of lucky. People have made us some black slings, which you can now get. Big fan of the black slings. This is a 1 ton. Now you can't tell because of the colour, because they're all black, but it still has the stripe down the front. So it's a 1 ton sling because it has the one stripe on it. You should make yourself familiar with the tag. Every single sling has a rated tag on it. If it doesn't have this tag, technically you cannot use it. You can't use it in the theatre, you can't use it in a gym, you can't use it anywhere. At home you can get away with it because it's your sling, you know it, you might have the tag put away somewhere, but in a public arena, definitely not. It has to have a tag. The advantage with some of these black slings that we get for aerial, they tuck the tags up under a sleeve, so it's less conspicuous. Have that out hanging your lyra from, it looks way less conspicuous than a big purple one with a big blue tag hanging out of it. So we're kind of lucky we get black ones now. They are more expensive, which is a little bit disappointing. These 1 ton, 1 metre slings, you can get them anywhere. Bunnings do Gorilla brand, which are quite a good brand. $6, $5. They're pretty cheap. The 2 ton ones are even $9, $10 or something like that. Obviously they go up as they get longer. You can get 2 metre, 3 metre, 4 metre, right up. The other advantage with the black ones that are made for the aerialists and for the theatre and stuff like that is they'll come in ½ metre length, so we can get ½ metre, 1.5 metre, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, whereas the Gorilla brand and the generic brands, they only come in 1 metre, so 1, 2, 3, 4, for example. So we are kind of lucky with the black ones. They're about $20 or $30 depending on where you buy them. So yeah, they are a little bit dearer, but you know, if you want it to look good, it's not that much money. And let's talk about the tag a little bit. On the tag, it's a bit hard to see, but on here they have a rating for how you sling the equipment. Now you do not have to be a rigger to, I mean a lot of people say you do. If you're going to hang yourself, if you're going to hang yourself up for a particular show or hang your equipment up, they say get a rigger to do it, get a rigger to do it. And if you're in the theatre or if you're in a venue, then yeah, you have to get a rigger because that will cover the insurance and whatnot. But if you're at home, you know, you go down the park on the weekend, you're not going to ring a rigger to come down and, you know, hang a sling from the monkey bars just to play on your lyra, stuff like that. So in a perfect world, then yeah, everyone would. But we don't live in a perfect world and no one's going to hire a rigger just to do that. So we know you're going to do it on your own and I don't have a problem with that, as long as you know what you're doing. Hence these videos. Now, on this tag, it shows you the shapes on how to hang it. A basic choke hang, let's say that's our bar. You just hang it over and pull it through the loop at the front. Now that is called a basic choke. A lot of people already know it, a lot of people do it. It stops the sling from sliding, it's tight, it's safe, beautiful, I do it all the time. But that actually decreases the rating of the sling. And if you look at the tag, it'll show on there, this particular one, this brand, all brands are slightly different, that's why they all have a tag. If you choke it, like I did then, it derates it from 1 ton down to 0.8 of a ton. So you just got to keep that in mind. If you're working close on your limits, putting a lot of weight on things, which you probably shouldn't be, but if you are, just keep in mind that it does derate it the way you hang it. So a choke, like I said, down through the middle and tighten it up like a knot like that, that's a choke. That takes it down to 800 kilos, so it's no longer a ton. If you were to hang it just over a bar like that, so it's just hanging, that's your 1 ton rating. That's perfect to hang 1 ton there. If you were to hang it over double, like that, so you've got 2 bottoms, that's actually doubled your rating. According to the tag, that gives you 2 ton. So even though you've got a 1 ton sling, if you hang it over like that and have two bits coming down the bottom, you've just made it 2 ton sling. That's why it's important to know what's on the tag. Read it, understand it. It even has angles on there, like if you were to have it hanging at 90 degrees for this one, so if you had 2 slings, 90 degrees that way, 90 degrees that way, it actually derates it to, it increases the rating to 1.4 ton. That would be like so, with 90 degree that way and 90 degree that way. Probably a bit easy to see if it's a longer sling, but if you've got 90 degrees up here and 90 degrees up there, that would give you 1.4 ton. So look at your tag, look at the pictures, see what it says, and you can understand the ratings for that. A lot of people don't. They just think it's complicated. It's not complicated. It's a picture with a number, and I really highly recommend you do that. With the maintenance of your slings, seriously, like I said, they're $6. If you get a cut, a scratch, or not a scratch, but like a big abrasion across the surface, just chuck it, get another one. Cut it in half. Don't just throw it in the bin, because someone will take it out the bin and use it. That always happens. So cut it in half so no one can use it, and chuck it in the bin, spend your $6, your $8, whatever it is, and go get another one. If, on the other hand, you are like me and you have hundreds of dollars worth of slings, like a 3 metre, 3 tonne, they get up around, they get a bit dearer then you'll want to maintain it. So have a look at your sling, make sure it's got no cuts or abrasions. You can actually run your fingers over the top and you'll feel if there's any lumps in it. If you've got some big lumps, it might mean that the inside is quite twisted or whatever, which could be a problem. If it feels really bad, then maybe it's worth chucking out, maybe it's worth keeping. You can wash these, by the way, chuck them in the washing machine. I do it all the time. No harsh detergents, just a soft soap, and yeah, they're fine to go. The manufacturer will tell you what you can and can't do in regards to washing. So, like I said earlier, always check the data that comes with it. Generally, it's a quick Google search. You look up Gorilla lifting slings, can I wash it? They'll have an answer there, and it'll tell you how to do it. So, get to know the web. I love it. I'll show you what's inside of a sling. Here's one I've just cut open. This was a purple sling. It's been used a lot out in the sun. That's what the sun does, it fades it. Other than the cut that I put in it, it's probably still a good sling. I mean, it's just got a bit of staining on it, it's a bit dirty, it's old, but there's nothing really wrong with it. The actual outer sheath, I think that's how they refer to it, the sheath, that doesn't actually have the strength in it anyway, that's just a protective coating. The actual strength comes from within inside the sling, which is made up of a bunch of fibres, like hair. It looks just, and it feels like hair too. Sort of like, it's just nylon, sort of feels like horse's hair. But it's all a bunch of little tiny fibres. You can actually pull them out and they get right down. You probably can't even see that, but that's as thin as a spider web. And it's just thousands of these little tiny fibres all put together to make this big mess of fibre. Put it in a sling to protect it, and there's your strength. So if anyone's wondering what's inside of a sling, you know what? It's kind of interesting. People love looking in it. It's worth $6 to buy one and just cut it open to see what's in it. I think it's quite fascinating, to be honest, and a lot of people like that, so that's what's inside of a sling. We do have another type of sling, which is the flat sling. This one is just, there's no inside, this is just a flat webbing type nylon sling, just sewn with a loop in the end, and the blue bit's just a protective cover. And that's just pretty much used the same thing as a sling. A soft sling's quite convenient, you can knot it tight or whatever. But if you've just got a basic cradle, you want to pick something up or hang something like that, then these flat slings are great for it. Big wide surface area, they're a little bit cheaper to buy. So it depends on what you're rigging, on what you might want. But if you go online or to a rigging shop or to a lifting shop, they have all these things on display. So for your particular needs, you can find what you want to get. Like a soft sling is perfect to do a choke around a tabless lyra, but you wouldn't want to put one of these around a tabless lyra, for instance. Where you use this, rigging off a tree. Nice big wide flat sling hanging on a tree branch, perfect. Now before you say it, I know people don't like rigging off tree branches. It's a grey area with rigging. I would do it because I'm a qualified tree surgeon, but some riggers say no, don't ever do it, but it can be done. The trees are quite strong, and if you're unsure, find someone that knows. Ring a tree company, ring a rigger, ask them to come have a look at your tree, and they will tell you if it's safe or not. Generally a tree lumping company will tell you. Gum trees can be a little bit wary because they tend to drop branches quite easily. But if you know what you're looking for, then it can be done. So I'm not anti-hanging from a tree. I won't just say don't do it like some people do. I just say do it, but do it properly. That's my spiel on trees, by the way, hanging on trees. But if I do hang on a tree, I'll use a flat sling because it doesn't damage the tree. It's nice and wide, nice and big, hang it over the branch, beautiful, love it. These also have tags. Every sling has to have a tag. So in the tag, it'll tell you how much weight it can hold. Being purple, it's a 1 ton sling. The purple is across the board for all slings for 1 ton, so the colour code still goes through. Same again, if you hang it like that, according to the tag, that gives you 2 ton. If you hang it straight like that, that gives you 1 ton. If you hang it on an angle, let's have a look here. A 60-degree angle. So the bottoms and the side, if you were to hang the load like that, that's around about 60 degrees. That gives you 1.7 tonne. So the ratings are all on the tag with the shape, tells you how to do it. So I hope that covers everything with slings. I suppose that's a lot of information considering it's just a sling, but you know, they are kind of important. We do hang from them quite a lot. So yeah, like I said, give me a call, send me a message, leave a message on my Facebook page. I'll give you all the details at the end of this video. Let me know if you've got any questions and I'll get back to you. Thanks. Hi, welcome back. Scott from Crunchtime Aerial. We're going to talk about ropes in this section. I love ropes, being a rigger, ropes are the schnizzle, love them. Can do a lot with them and we're going to talk about them today. This is just your basic climbing rope, braided, twisted, nylon. There's a whole array of ropes out there. They come in all sorts of colours, and these days the technological advances with rope, with Dyneema and things along those lines, you can get very, very thin rope. It's very, very strong. Some are heat resistant, some aren't, some float, some don't. The whole world of ropes is huge. It's absolutely huge. But we mainly use climbing rope, okay? Because we're in aerial. Generally, the one sort of size fits all. It's strong. This particular rope, it's 10.5 mil in diameter. It's polyester double twisted braided rope, and that will hold approximately 4 tonne. So each manufacturer is slightly different. Some might be 3.5 tonne, some might be 4.2 tonne. Once again, look at your manufacturer's specs, where you buy it from, and they can tell you everything you need to know about the rope. Like I said, this one's about 4 tonne, very flexible. It's good resistance to the weather. It does go a bit hard in the sun, so I wouldn't leave it in the sun permanently. It doesn't mind the rain. You can use it wet, you can use it dry. It doesn't stretch, although you can buy dynamic rope or static rope. Static rope just means it doesn't stretch. Dynamic means it does stretch. So depending on what you buy is what you get. Some people like the dynamic rope for hanging their equipment, because when they do if say they're on a silk and they do a drop, it takes up some of the drop. So it's a little bit less harsh on the body. Other people, they climb a lot, so they want a nice static rope so they don't lose energy in the climbing. So yeah, rope is very versatile. I'm a fan of it, using rope as opposed to slings, purely because I can adjust the size. If you tie the right knot, you can make it shorter, longer, stronger, whatever. You can do a lot with it. It's relatively cheap. Something like this is around the $4 or $5 a metre mark. So it's not too bad if you bought like 10, 20 metres or whatever. It's easily cut. You just cut it with a knife, Stanley knife, and you can just burn the end over, which I've done there, and that just stops it from fraying. I usually I like to show people what's inside of a rope. So I normally keep a rope with a bit of the stuff coming out there, but today I'm afraid not. Okay, that was a really bad joke, sorry. I just had to do it. Yes, I'm a dad, so I can do dad jokes. All right, so yes, back to ropes. I got one similar, same thing, double braided twisted rope. Once again, you can just cut it. This is just a bit thicker. They go anywhere from 1 millimetre rope right up to 40, 50 millimetre rope. Use it for all different things. It's fantastic. What you need to know about rope? Not a lot. All you need to do is know how to tie the knots. We won't go through knots in this video because knots are a huge subject, and there are some great websites out there. The particular one I use is Knots by Grog, and I'm going to give you that website, and I'm going to give you the details and a link to click on that. and there's some basic knots that we will use. Generally a few bowline, figure eight, probably not bowline, more like figure eight, not the most in aerial. And yeah, Grog has some great videos, step-by-step guides, what it's used for, the history of rope. So there's no point in me reinventing the wheel and going through it over again. I'm just going to give you that website and you can look it up yourself. The other types of ropes we use in aerial, the climbing rope's the most common. You know, we use this for pulley systems because it's strong. You can get it in any colour. Easy to tie a knot, it's long lasting, so we use it in pulley systems, we use it for climbing, pulling people up and down, we use it for a lot. The other type of rope we use is a cotton rope. This is 100% pure cotton. It's very soft on your hands. This is extremely soft. It's just as flexible. It's not as high rated. Cotton rope can break a lot easier than that, so that might have a 4-ton rating. This rope is actually thicker, and this has probably only got, I'm not sure exact, but it's about a 1-ton rating, so 900 kilos to a ton, so it is rated a lot lower. But the beauty of cotton rope, because it's only 3 strands twisted together, you can feed a steel cable through the centre of it. So let's say you're using it for trapeze, it's mainly used for, say, trapeze. You can have the nice soft cotton feel and hold on to it, you can spin around on it, you don't slip down. But you have the strength by having the steel cable going up the middle of it. So you can put a 6mm steel cable through it, strap it to the bar, and you've got your strength and you've got your nice feel. So I'm a big fan of the cotton rope. It is hard to work with. It goes very fluffy, like a frayed knot. And you put a bit of Lyra tape on it to hold it together. If the Lyra tape was not on that would just be ruined in no time. So you've got to keep it well maintained. It mainly comes in white too. They don't really offer many colours, so it can be dyed though. You can chuck this in the washing machine and dye it to different colours. I've seen some red and blue. It looks pretty good. It's hard to dye it black because going from white to black, but yeah, it does look pretty good. I like it because it looks good when you splice it. So this here is not so much the bottom bit there. That's just an end splice that I did to finish it off. But that's like an end I normally do for a Lyra. So the Lyra would normally go on this end. Hang it up from your hang point. It actually looks kind of neat and tidy, and you've got your little fluffy ends which make it look pretty good, and it is a nice looking rope, and you can get it nice and fat. You can get it up to 40mm, so you can have a nice big fat rope to hold on to, and that attached to a Lyra, you can open up a whole new routine by doing tricks and stuff above the Lyra as well as on the Lyra, so they come in quite handy. You can also splice, say, quick link into the end of the rope, so your rope has a quick link on the end of it. You can just attach it to the Lyra when you want to, and take it off, wash it, do whatever you need to. It's not very hard wearing, being cotton. It will wear quite easily, not with your hands are quite good with it, but it doesn't like rubbing on metal surfaces, so it's good to put an eyelet in the top. So I put a nice metal eyelet at the top there, so the shackle or the carabiner or whatever can run on the metal rather than actually on the rope, and that just protects it. So yeah, that's cotton rope, the twisted braided rope that we use for climbing. Most people just refer to this as climbing rope. You don't need to know the technical terms of it, just basically climbing rope. So hopefully that covers your questions and answers for ropes. I'm not sure what else you might need to know about those, but I'm sure if you've got a question, like I said before, and I'll say it again, I'll leave my details, pop me a line, email, message, whatever, and I'll get back to you. I'm happy to answer everybody's questions on that. So yeah, I'll catch you in the next segment. Thanks. Hi, welcome back, Scott again. This last segment for this series, I'm going to talk about load testing. And this is not something you will do. It's not even something most riggers will do. They just send it down to the testing centre and get it done. But when your life is on the line, you're up there, you're hanging there, it's probably a good peace of mind to know that we actually do load testing and load rating. So I just wanted to touch on that subject quickly. This will be a short segment, just to explain that for you. Now, I do my load testing here. Generally, load testing for a particular product is just pull something until it breaks, and then you know at what point it breaks. It's pretty simple. That's about 99% of engineering, and that's exactly what my engineer said. If you test something to braking load, at least you've got a point to work from, and then you can come back and say, right, well, you can safely work it at this point. If it's going to break at this point, we know where you can work it at. With Lyra, for instance, I will use Lyra as an example because I make them myself and I test them here. A standard hollow Lyra, which I use 25.4mm medium gauge hollow tube, that will hold its shape by putting 800 kilos on it. So I would just strap it to the floor with a strap, just lift it to 800 kilos, and the Lyra will elongate slightly and go a little bit egg-shaped. But when you let the weight off, the Lyra then springs back to the correct size. So 800 kilos, I would give it its rating because it comes back to its original size. I doubt that anyone could ever put 800 kilos onto a Lyra, but at least it's good to know that you can actually get to that range. I wanted to test it further, so I put 1.1 tonne on it, and that got it to stretch egg shape to the point where it wouldn't return to its original shape. So it actually stretched out and stayed the egg shape. Kept lifting it, and eventually I got to 1.5 tonne before it broke. And I've got it right here. Just bear with me. Okay, so this was the Lyra we tested. As you can see, I'll step back so it fits in the camera angle. It got to about 1.4 tonne at that point when it was that shape. That's from a single point at the bottom to a single point at the top, just stretching it 1.4 tonne, and then it finally broke on the top. So the metal split around there, but it didn't actually break. It cracked, the metal split, it bent, but it was still hanging on. It still held the 1.4 tonne. So that goes back to my earlier segment where I was saying that metal bends rather than breaks. I mean, you're not going to still be hanging on a Lyra at 1.4 tonne with it looking like that, waiting for it to break. So it's good to know that they're the sort of loads that it can hold. I did a solid Lyra, same thing. It took a little bit longer to break it, a little bit more weight. But yeah, that's the sort of ratings they do. If it's something else other than Lyra, like a rig, for instance, I build rigs, I will just hang something from it. And the last time I did my testing, I hung a tonne and a half off the rig, and yeah, we went around, played with the legs, pushed it, swung it, jumped up and down on it, and it didn't break, so we know that's safe for 1.5 tonne. And that's a static rating, which means, yeah, you wouldn't want to drop 1.5 tonne on it, so that's static rating, but giving it a dynamic rating, the engineers use a mathematical formula to work out a dynamic rating, and that gives our rig, say, a rating of 300 kilos. And that's 300 kilos doing whatever you like. You can do a big drop on the silk, and because it's aerial equipment, we know what people can do on it, and we know what people do on it, so it is actually built to take that. We know what a drop looks like, we know how big people can do drops. So when we make the rig, we make it so you can do that with 300 kilos, and that's how it's rated. So a lot of people get confused on that. They say, well, you know, it's a 300 kilo rating, but what if I do a drop? It's like, well, yeah, we know you do drops, so it's designed for that. So pretty much anything that's made for aerial is the same thing. It's the same with carabiners and figure eights and things like that. That's why they have that kilonewton rating, because they know you're going to do drops on it. They know you're going to do this and they know you're going to do that. So it's built to handle that. So in short, I suppose, in Australia especially, everything's rated, everything's above board, everything has certificates. They do their best to minimise any sort of failure or injury or anything like that. A lot of people go on saying this company's better than that company, whatever. But seriously, no company is going to make anything that is substandard and risk their reputation or their livelihood because they just want to get away with cheap. People do that when they're making, you know, $5 things they sell on Wish. They don't do it in the aerial industry. Well, we hope not anyway. I'm pretty sure there's none out there. So you can feel pretty safe if you're on a Lyra, if you're on a trapeze, whatever it is made to do what you want to do on it. There's pretty much nothing you can do on it there where it will break. I will go a little bit into safety factors as well. A sling is a great example. So as we talked about before, purple sling, 1 tonne, 1 strike, 1 tonne. So it's rated at 1 tonne. That means you can hang a 1 tonne on it, right? 1 tonne safely, right? That means hanging a tonne on it. It doesn't mean hanging 800 kilos, or I better not get near a tonne. You can actually hang a tonne on it, because everything that's made has a built-in safety factor. This particular brand, Gorilla, with their slings, they have a 5-to-1 safety factor, which means if they rate this at 1 tonne, it won't break, or it shouldn't break, until it hits 5 tonne. So if you put that in the test bed, it should take 5 tonne to break it. We don't ever want to get to near breaking point with anything. You know, I don't want to get, if this had a breaking point of 1.1 tonne, you wouldn't want to be putting a tonne on it, because if you knock it, you could put 1.1 on it. So that's why it has a safety factor. Everything has a safety factor. Particular slings, you can pay extra. You can pay up to $30 or $40 for these, and they have a 7-to-1 safety factor. So it means this 1 tonne sling won't break until 7 tonne, which is good to know, because if you are putting a tonne on it, you know you can do whatever you want with that tonne. You can swing it around, you can jump up and down, you can do whatever, it's going to hold a tonne. Same with hoops, lyra, rigs and things like that. If I say it's rated at 300 kilos, do whatever you want at 300 kilos, because I know it's not going to break until you hit 2 tonne or 1.5 tonne or something like that. So that's the safety factors built in to everything we buy. Carabiners, figure eights, swivels, things like that, they all have a 5-to-1, 6-to-1, 7-to-1 safety factor. So if your swivel can hold 2 tonne, it can really hold about 8 tonne before it will break. And I have done a lot of testing. I cut them open, I have a look inside, I lift things up with the forklift and see if I can break them. That's what I did with the hoop. I put a weight on it, I lift it up with the forklift, and yeah, they're pretty good. There's very, very, very few things that will fail before the safety factor range. Like, I've never broken a 1 tonne sling at 1 tonne, I can guarantee you that. So basically, feel safe. Everything's rated. And once again, if you've got any questions, let me know. I'll leave my details at the end of the video. Give me a call, email, whatever. Anything you want to know about load testing, ratings. Like I said, this is not something you'll ever do yourself. I mean, some people love experimenting. You might go out and play with it and do it. That's great. But it's something you shouldn't have to worry about. As a performer, as an instructor, or a student, you should be able to just grab a sling and go, yep, I can use that and I know I'm safe on it. So that's all you really need to know. And hopefully that's what you got from this video. And I'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening. Cheers.